and welcome to the April Listening Librarians. I'm Katie, and I am joined by Jennifer and Kimberly. And this month is We Love Our Library Month. So, of course, we are quite biased as librarians, but we wanted to talk about books that are about libraries or librarians. So I'm going to send it over to you, Jennifer. What did you listen to?
All right. Well, my first book is kind of historical fantasy. It's called The Librarian of Crooked Lane by C.J. Archer. It came out in 2022, and it's the first in the Glass Library series. So this series is set in post-World War I Britain.
Cool.
And our main character is Sylvia Ash, who is a librarian / journalist. Now that it's post-World War I and a lot of men haven't come back, she's taking a job working for a very curmudgeonly sort of fellow at the London Philosophical Society. It's the best she can do because it's kind of a tough time.
Yeah.
Now, she grew up moving around. She really has no knowledge of her family's past, and her brother died in the war, and her mother died of Spanish flu, so she's all alone trying to make a go of things. Now, she also has her brother's journal, and in this journal, there's an implication that maybe there's some connection with her family to magic. So she wants to know more, and there's a very prominent female magician she wants to talk to, but she's hard to reach. And so Sylvia decides she's going to try and connect with her son. Enter her son, Gabriel Glass, who comes from a noble family, but he's also a consultant for Scotland Yard. Now, he is currently investigating the theft of a magician-made painting, and the two of them cross paths. They share some information, and he unwittingly gets Sylvia fired. Because, like I said, she works for this curmudgeon. He doesn't really like women working in the workplace anyway, and any excuse to get rid of her, he's going to take it. But Gabriel then gets Sylvia a job in a really amazing library that focuses on books of magic.
Ooh.
So the two of them continue to work together to solve this theft. She's learning more about magic, and like I said, it sets up a series that is still coming out. But it was just a really interesting twist on late 19-teens, early 1920s Britain and the real historical context, but also throw in magic and libraries and all sorts of good stuff.
Fun.
So this book was about 8 hours to listen to, narrated by Marion Hussey, and it was just a nice, engaging sort of book. I haven't gotten to the others in the series, but if you like magic in your libraries, there's a good choice.
What did you read, Kimberly?
My first book is an adorable middle grade book. It's called The Lost Library. This book had me every emotion imaginable, from crying to laughing to it was wonderful. The book is written by Rebecca Stead and Wendy Mass, narrated by Christopher Gobar, Jennifer Bloom, and Rob Dickens. Runtime is about 4 hours and 15 minutes or so. This book is told mainly in 3 points of view. We have Mortimer, who's an adorable orange cat. We have Evan, a precocious 11-year-old. And we have A.L., who is a ghost.
Okay.
Oh, wow.
A.L. comes down the basement one day, and she takes some wood, builds a little library. If you don't know what a little library are, they are small usually house-shaped structures that people put books in that people can take and drop off other books. She builds one of these little libraries, and she fills it with books that are sitting in the basement on a library cart, which You're like, a library cart? She takes them out to like the main green in town, and Mortimer, the cat, comes with her, and Mortimer lays down next to the little library to guard it. AL goes home. Well, the next thing we know, Evan comes along, and he sees this little library and this orange cat, and he goes running right over to it. And he ends up taking 2 books from the little library. And he pays a little attention to Mortimer, because, of course, Mortimer is just so cute. And then he heads to see his friend Rafe. And they are looking at these books, and they realize that the day they were returned, something terrible happened. The library in town burned down, and a couple people were killed.
Ooh.
And the date of that is in 1999. So we're kind of in current time, and we're looking back into 1999 when the fire happened. They found that the books are the kind where you check out by writing your name on the little card. And both books were returned on the day the library burned down. And both of them are checked out by a person named H.G. Higgins, who just happens to be, in current time, a very famous author. He must have lived in the town in the 90s. And then Evan sets out to find out how the library caught on fire. He finds all kinds of help from his new friends, Mortimer and A.L. So if you want to know who set the fire or who H.G. Higgins is, take a listen. It's definitely worth 4 hours of your time.
Yeah, well, and she's a lovely author too, Rebecca Stead. Okay, so I did a book called The Air Raid Book Club. It's by Lyons, and it just came out last year. And it's about 10 hours, and it was narrated by Julie Bond, who just has this lovely British grandma voice. So it is set in 1938, or at least that's when it starts, and our main character is Gertie Bingham. She is now the sole owner of Bingham Books. So it's actually about a bookstore and not a library. Oopsie. I didn't realize that. So Bingham Books is in London. Now she used to run the bookstore with her husband, but he has since passed away of an illness. And so now it's just Gertie and her dog Hemingway. And she and her husband could not have children, so she's kind of lonely. It's this big house. It's just her and the dog. And she's actually considering retiring and selling the bookshop. But it turns out no one wants to buy a business in the middle of a war. So it's just kind of, functioning as it always has. Now, Harry's best friend is involved in politics, and he has just made a mission trip to Germany where he is trying to get out as many Jewish children as possible. So it's 1938. It's before the really bad stuff starts to happen. And he calls Gertie and asks her to take a 15-year-old young lady named Hetty in. And it does take a little bit of convincing because she's kind of in that I want to be grumpy, just leave me alone attitude. But Hetty does arrive, and they actually really start to bond. Not because it was never I want to be your mom, because Hetty's mom is alive, but kind of like an aunt/friend relationship. And then their relationship really blossoms when the Blitz begins. So during the Blitz, obviously people are really scared, and they're hiding in these bomb shelters. And all there really is to talk about is how scared you are and what are the Nazis going to do and are we going to die? And so Hetty and Gertie come up with this idea to have an air raid book club. So we know we're going to have to be in these air raid shelters. Let's pick a book ahead of time, one for grown-ups, one for kids. And then during the actual air raids, we can all come together and we'll discuss Dickens or Jane Austen or Winnie the Pooh. And it's a lovely story. The book club actually grows to include POWs as the war progresses. And of course, there is the tragic reality of war hitting home. London does, if you know your history, start getting more and more frequently bombed. So can the Air Raid Book Club survive the war? It was very uplifting, lovely characters, and I love a good story that's written about books. So I enjoyed it, even if it wasn't quite about a library. Oops, but they did stuff that libraries do.
Sure.
Right.
In times of war, things might change up a little bit.
Right.
Fair. Well, my second one, you're going to see a theme here. It's another sort of historical fantasy, another first book in a series. This one, the series is completely finished, though.
Okay.
It's 8 books. And that is The Invisible Library. The first book is called that. The series is called that. And the author is Genevieve Cogman. And this one's kind of fun because you've got... It takes you a while to figure this out, but the library in the stories is this big central library in some unspecified place that's kind of like the hub of multiverses. And the librarians who work in the library will get sent out on missions to different worlds at different times to retrieve unique books.
That's
and
fun.
Bring them back to the library. This library is vast. And they do actually have technology like computers, but wireless technology doesn't work in them. So when you're in the library, it's kind of jarring because it's got modern stuff, but the bulk of this story takes place in a world kind of like a Victorian England.
Okay.
So our main character, our main librarian, is Irene, and she has been on several missions, going off to different worlds, universes. And one of the cool things that she gets to do as an official librarian is the library has a language. And if you read this book in print, the language is in bold font, but there's like no real description as to what it sounds like. And if you're an official librarian with the official librarian tattoo on your back, that tattoo kind of activates when you speak the language.
Oh.
It's kind of freaky. But she can use it to get out of tight situations, open locked doors. Because the idea behind the language is you're using it to convince something to do what is actually in its nature. So, you would say, door unlock.
Okay.
And open so that you can get out of a locked room. Anyway, that's one cool thing. She's just come back from one mission and now she's being assigned a partner or a mentee. And she's like, really? And this partner is Kai, who is a very beautiful young man. And we find out later on he has another part of his being that is really intriguing. So I'm not going to really get into that. Suffice it to say, he's kind of a supernatural creature of some sort. Yeah. And they are sent to an alternate sort of steampunk London, like I said, Victorian era, to retrieve a very dangerous book. But when they get there, it's already been stolen.
Of course.
Yes. And this is a world that leans a little more towards chaos. So there are a lot more supernatural creatures. You've got some very tricksy fae, and you've got werewolves and vampires and very unpredictable magic.
Intriguing.
It's a lot. And in the course of their trying to track down this book, they come across a man named Peregrine Vale, who is a very Sherlock-like character. And he gets involved in their adventures. They're trying to be really cagey about who they are and their secrets for the library, but you cannot fool any kind of Sherlock Holmes character. So, yeah, he's got to stick his nose in. They also keep running up against Lord Silver, who is a Fey diplomat, and he's always trying to seduce Irene, and yeah, he's a lot. And then another librarian called Bradamant, who is also trying to get the book. And Irene and Kai are trying to figure out, is she actually trying to be helpful? Does she have an ulterior motive? Is she, kind of going to sell out the library? We don't know. It's a romp. I mean, you've got sort of that, not quite sci-fi, but mostly fantasy, world hopping, adventure, spies, secret languages, things like that. It's a lot, but there's a lot of humor to it too. There are some very chaotic, a little unrealistic scenes. I think there's something with elephants, but it's very entertaining.
Okay.
There, I will say, content warning for violence, some body horror, but roll with it, I guess, unless it's really not your jam. It's about 12 hours. It's narrated by Kristen Atherton, who has a lovely British accent, and it's just a lot of fun, and hopefully that'll pull you into the other books as well.
Nice.
Well, I unintentionally read 2 mysteries set in libraries. My second book is called The Department of Rare Books and Special Collections. This is by Eva Jurczyk, and it's narrated by Hannah Campbell. It runs 9 hours and 40 minutes, so just shy of 10 hours. I will warn you, this novel is a very slow burn. So if slow burns are not your thing, you do not want to read this one. There's also a trigger warning of suicide, so you might want to keep that one in mind. This novel is set in a very large university, unnamed, of course, in Canada. The library director, Christopher, has had a stroke and is laying in a coma. His second in charge, Liesl, was on sabbatical. She gets brought back from sabbatical to be the new acting assistant director. And one of the first things she finds out is that their latest acquisition, a $500,000 Bible, is missing. The Bible is called the Plankton Polyglot Bible. It consists of 6 volumes that they have, and they are bound in red leather, and they can't be found anywhere. The donors are getting anxious because they donated the money to buy this Bible, and they haven't been able to see it yet.
Understood.
So there's a lot of politics in this book, a lot of how to keep your donors happy. Liesl doesn't know exactly what to do, so she goes to the president of the university and she says, should we call the police? And of course, the president of the university is like, no, we can't call the police. We can't let them know that this is missing. It'll be a disaster for the university. So Liesl goes back and she has her staff going through all the stacks trying to see if this set got misplaced somewhere. And then, oddly enough, one of the staff members goes missing. And, now the police have to get involved.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting mystery. Like I said, it is a very slow burn. The academic part of it is quite fun to me. I was interested in seeing the play of the politics. Also, she talks about several antique books and what goes into collecting antique books, and that was the part that I really enjoyed the most, was learning what it's like at an academic library that's large enough to be buying $500,000 book sets.
Yeah.
So I would recommend it if you don't mind a slow burn.
So my final book is The Library of the Dead by T.L. Huchu. It's from 2021 and it's about 8 hours. So in this novel, ghosts are not a big deal. So certain people can see them and communicate with them, and it's honestly not even that special of a talent. So we have our main character. Her name is Ropa. She is of Zimbabwean descent, but this takes place in Scotland. And she's one of those people who can communicate with ghosts. And that's essentially what her job is. If you are a ghost, you come to her. If you have a message that you need to pass on to a loved one. And then, of course, though, those loved ones have to pay ROPA at the end of the day. She is not a charity, because she needs that money to be able to pay for, she has a little sister who's actually quite intelligent, and they're trying to get her into a better school, and she's just trying to help grandma out with their living expenses. But there's this ghost who is a mother who will not leave ROPA alone. She keeps asking for ROPA's help to find her son, and she knows that she does not have any living people who can help pay ROPA, but please help find my son. I know something bad happened. He got kidnapped. And at the same time, ROPA starts learning about these children that are essentially just like old people husks. Like they're really creepy looking, like toddlers with like old lady faces and their teeth have fallen out. And so something really weird is happening. And so ROPA does get pulled in. And I'm listening to this and I'm like, where on earth is the library that is in the title of this book? So finally, we get to, she has a friend who works at this secret library where you need to be a member with paying dues, which to me, let's, call yourself a library, but we never make you pay for things. But this library is full of books about magic. And so she does eventually get into this library, and she, despite not being able to pay to be a member, so she does get a book that will help her on her quest to figure out what is going on with these children, and can she find and stop these kidnappers. And I don't want to say too much else because it's going to start giving away like what's actually happening. But it was lovely, complex world building. We obviously have a butt-kicking heroine. We have a really cool side character named Priya, who's one of her best friends. And I will say the conclusion was a little foreseeable, I would say, but it was still very satisfying. So if you want like a fun, adventure with ghosts and a little bit of a library, definitely check out The Library of the Dead.
One of the things I really liked about that book is the entrance to the library is in Edinburgh's, I think, Calton Hill Cemetery.
Yes.
Like at David Hume's tomb, and David Hume being a Scottish philosopher. And I've been there.
Oh.
So like I can visualize that. I'm like, whoa, that's so cool.
And it is book one of a series as well.
Yeah.
So, well, what do we have coming up next month?
So next month for May, we are going to be talking about some books that will fall into the category of mental health awareness, because May is Mental Health Awareness Month. Now that could look like anxiety, depression, OCD, ADHD, autism, any kind of neurodivergence.
Big umbrella.
There's a lot. And it's become a more visible topic in books from, middle grade all the way up. Mm-hmm. So I think we're going to have some really good books to talk about next month.
All right. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
We'll see you in May.
Bye.